Dear friends, dear colleagues, I'm very glad to be here in Geneva. And you know, 2 days ago when I was flying here and I was looking at the Geneva lake from my flight, from my plane, I was thinking about the first time in my life, years ago, when I was coming here and looking at Geneva lake and thinking, oh my God, how beautiful it is from the flight. Have you seen the depths of the color of Geneva lake? But this time, when I was flying, I had very heavy feelings because it's been longer than 2 years. I cannot see the beauty of our lakes, rivers, our soil from the flight in Ukraine. I cannot fly from Ukraine to anywhere. To get anywhere, it takes longer than 24 hours. But the most touching and sensitive and hard part is that you cannot see that beauty. And you know that even the sounds and the nature and the animals are suffering a lot from that. Since February 2022, we have millions of tragedies, of killed, wounded, absolutely destroyed cities. Around 90% of the infrastructure of Mariupol is absolutely destroyed. We don't have the real numbers, it's only approximate numbers, but at least 25,000 people only in one city of Mariupol are killed. Currently, we have another terrible number. More than 20,000 Ukrainian children are being illegally deported to Russia. The Russians are taking Ukrainian children to so-called camps. They lie to the parents or they kidnap these children, and then later on they say that your parents don't want you. And they impose the citizenship on these children, and these children have already incredible traumas for the generations to come. And when I'm telling you all of this, I'm thinking of that Ukrainian spirit that we had in February 2022, when so many of different politicians were coming to me in February saying that you should stay somewhere in Western Europe or whatever because you shouldn't go to Ukraine. You would be killed, you would be arrested because Russians will be looking to destroy all the parliament, all the authorities in Ukraine. But we felt like, why do you intimidate our spirit? Why do you think that we should go somewhere else? In my life, and I'm 33, I had 2 revolutions when we were standing on the streets to defend our right to live in freedom, to defend our European freedom. And you know, in February 2022, most of Ukrainians were shocked that it's not only incredibly big tragedy, but also it feels that we are the ones who know the real price for freedom. We are the ones that are screaming to all the world, please, impose sanctions, give us more weapons. But it seems that it was the moment that uncovered how many problems we have in our international security system. Why such organizations as UN, as other international organizations, are not having the tools to protect that freedom. That was the moment when we understood that we have to resist. We didn't have a single moment of hesitation because it's absolutely a survival to be able to live on your land. That's something that we're fighting for. You know, when I was passing the border going to European Parliament and the Council of Europe, after a few weeks when the invasion started, there was one thing that struck me a lot. just after a few seconds of crossing the border, I've heard that the birds are singing. And that was the moment when we realized, oh my God, I wasn't hearing that birds singing for a number of weeks. I've heard so many air sirens, I've heard so many shellings, I've heard so many air missiles, but the birds actually are singing, but not when the bombs are flying. You know that every moment when there is attack on Ukraine, in every animal shelter, the animals have heart attacks or they're getting paralyzed. We don't have the real numbers of how many of agriculture has really suffered, but only for the first year of the invasion. We have the number from the Ministry of our Agriculture Policy of Ukraine, and it's at least 500,000 of animals from agriculture that were absolutely killed or destroyed from the places where they were. We also have the number that around 900 dolphins were found dead in the Black Sea, but the real number can be more than 50,000. Where is justice? This is the question that we all ask. And in February 2022, I was asking this question, not only because of the war, but also because I was 7 months pregnant. And a father of my child at that time was 6 months politically imprisoned in Georgia. He's the former president of Georgia, Mikhail Saakashvili, who fought against Putin and Russia, and he was arrested in Georgia for his opposition against Putin. During most of my pregnancy, I was visiting him in prison, defending him, but in February 2022, the world seemed to be an absolute hell. Imagine a moment when the birds have stopped singing. Imagine a life where you need to take a weapon to defend your ability to have a drink on a Friday night or to have a conversation with your family. Imagine a life where your child might be never seeing the school again where he or she studied, where your house or a farm is flooded, and every animal in your local zoo is dead, where your children cannot play in the park, and the only thing that you can hear is this sound. This is the sound that for many of Ukrainians feels as the sound of death. The sound that air missile is flying somewhere and it may reach you within a few minutes or half an hour. But Russians managed to create the air missile that flies from Crimea to Kiev only with 3 minutes. And in Kharkiv, in Sumy, currently, the Russians are attacking almost every second minute, and the level of destruction is insane. So what has changed since the February 2022? For us, Ukrainians, we've learned that we shouldn't be naive and we should rely only on ourselves. And every day, our energy infrastructure is absolutely challenged, but our electricity engineers are making magic under the bombs to restore ability to have light for millions of Ukrainians. Our farmers keep going to work on the land, even when the land is mined, and at least 30% of Ukrainian land is currently mined. And I'm saying this to you to ask you one question. Are you taking your security seriously? What did you do to protect your freedom to vote in your elections? Are you sure that Russian influence will not affect your political choice? Please think about it. And today I'm standing in front of you not only as Ukrainian politician. I'm standing here as someone who knows the real price for freedom that I pay personally, when for me everything personal became absolutely existential and political and geopolitical, when all my professional is all about personal. Its ability to have a day in freedom. We are fighting not because we are Ukrainians. We are fighting because we want all of you to make sure that international organizations that are very often dysfunctional finally rethink their own purpose, and they create the tools to be able to stop the wars and aggression. We should have the early warnings to stop a possible aggression to invade another country. The principles of UN and other organizations were not rethought from the Second World War. Now it's the time to do it. I'm here also to ask you for more sanctions, because sanctions, they really work to stop feeding the Russian aggressor. I'm here also to ask you for the corporate responsibility of the companies. Do you know how many different details of different technical stuff is being exported to Russia that Russia is later using for producing the weapon? A lot. So please make sure that in your corporate world, you impose the code of corporate responsibility of not having any trade or export that may end up in Russia. I'm standing here because I want peace. As a mother, as a woman, as a human, as a European, I want peace. But not at the cost of giving up our territories, not at the cost of forgetting what real freedom is. So don't ask me, please, when the war will be over. Ask why Putin keeps doing it. Ask inside your societies, what did you do to protect your securities? We all need justice. And for that justice, it's possible to run the compensation mechanisms for those who suffered. It's possible from the frozen assets that are currently in different countries to transfer them to register of damages that every Ukrainian. And it's not only about every Ukrainian, it's symbolically very important that we will have justice. The victims will receive the compensations for that suffering. It's incredibly important for the justice of the future. So if you care about freedom, then stand with Ukraine. If you care about justice, then please make sure that you take security seriously, to be able to protect the sound of freedom, the sound of birds singing. Thank you.